He touched me, slowly, deliberately, and my husband didn't stop him. That's when I knew the therapist wasn't just helping us. He was leading me somewhere I hadn't been in years. Before we dive in, please take a second to like this video and hit subscribe. It's fast, easy, and helps the channel grow more than you know. Thanks for being here. Now, let's begin. She just lies there. My husband's voice was clipped, bitter. No reaction, no sound. It's like I'm the only one in the room. I turned to him, slow and sharp. Maybe that's because you don't know how to make me feel anything. He blinked. His shoulders stiffened. Excuse me? I didn't flinch. Maybe you're not as good as you think. That's why I feel like a corpse. The tension dropped like pressure in the room. The therapist sat still, mid-50s, silver at the temples, tailored suit. His presence filled the space, every movement deliberate. He let the silence stretch, watching us like a surgeon eyeing an incision point. So, he said calmly, neither of you are satisfied. I leaned back, arms crossed. My husband just stared ahead, jaw tight. When did it start? He asked. My husband shrugged. I don't know. A while ago, it just stopped working. Then his eyes moved to me. And you? I hesitated. I don't know. The therapist didn't look away. He studied me like he already knew the answer. You're not detached, he said finally. You're bored. I shifted, uncrossing and recrossing my legs. You're stuck in the same script, he continued. Your body doesn't respond to what it already expects. My husband scoffed quietly but said nothing. And when you know exactly how it starts and ends, the therapist added, voice smoother now, it stops feeling real. It becomes routine. I tried not to react, but I felt it. The weight of his voice, the way it slid under my skin. What are we supposed to do? My husband asked. His tone had lost its edge. The therapist leaned forward just slightly, not invasive, intentional. Change the pattern, he said. Do something that doesn't give her time to think, something unfamiliar, something physical. I realized I'd been holding my breath. My husband looked at me, unsure. Like what? The therapist smiled faintly. His eyes lingered on me longer than they should have. Experiment. We talked about it on the way home, then once more the next morning, sitting across from each other in silence, stirring cold coffee. By the end of the day, we decided to try. He turned me over onto all fours, hands tight on my hips, his rhythm more focused, more deliberate, like he was trying to break through something stuck. Don't think, he said, low and breathless. Just let go. I gripped the sheets, focused on the way he moved, the tension in his fingers, the pressure building with each movement. I matched him, met every shift of his body. I wanted it to work, but my body felt distant, responsive but hollow, like something was missing between each breath. When it was over, he rolled onto his back, eyes on the ceiling. I stayed there a moment longer, then stood and walked to the bathroom without a word. The next night, I took control. I climbed on top, kissed his neck, moved my hips the way I used to. He exhaled softly, hands resting at my waist, trying to follow my lead. I made all the right sounds. I touched him where I knew he liked it, but it felt like performing a memory. My body was present, but everything else stayed quiet. He didn't ask how it felt. I didn't pretend. A few days later, we tried the kitchen. No warning, just his hands at my waist, turning me around, lips brushing my neck. He guided me forward over the counter, hurried, unspoken. His hands moved to his waist, a soft clink breaking the silence. I planted my palms on the edge, waiting for something to shift. But all I saw were fridge magnets, a stack of unopened mail, a leftover wine glass. Whatever he was trying to reach, I wasn't there to receive it. The last time, we tried the shower. Steam clouded the glass as he pulled me in. He didn't say anything, just wrapped his arms around me and let the water run over us. He kissed my shoulder, ran his hands down my sides, and held me close, slowly, like he was trying not to scare the moment off. I leaned into the tile, eyes closed, trying to stay with him, trying not to drift. "Just feel me," he whispered. His breath was warm against my ear. The water rolled over my skin in waves. His hands moved with quiet certainty, like he still believed this could work. For a second, I did too. A flicker, a pull in my chest, something I hadn't felt in a long time. But it faded, and when he stepped away, I stayed behind the curtain, letting the water drown the silence. New positions, new places, new rules, and still, nothing reached me. "Maybe it wasn't enough," I whispered. We lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The last attempt had been just like the others, empty. "We need to go further," he said. I turned to him. "Further how?" His jaw clenched. "We'll figure it out." That night, he tied my wrists to the headboard. The rope was snug, rough against my skin. I flexed slightly, feeling the tension bite and hold. Then came the blindfold, smooth fabric over my eyes, not firm behind my head. Darkness. Stillness. The bed shifted. The room felt charged, like the silence was watching. Then his hands found me, no hesitation, his grip firm at my waist as his mouth moved down my neck, over my collarbone, tracing warmth in slow, certain strokes. I gasped as his fingers slid along my sides, down my stomach, his touch heavier than usual, more deliberate. He didn't speak, just moved. His body closed the space between us, his weight settling behind me. He adjusted against me. A pause. Then his body pressed closer, searching for connection I still didn't feel. I flinched, wrists pulling instinctively against the rope. "Relax," he whispered. I tried. His pace was steady, restrained, but building. Each movement more grounded, like he was holding something back. The bed shifted beneath us. My body moved with him, the blindfold keeping me locked in sensation, not thought. I held on to the rhythm, matched his movement, let him take control. Still nothing lit up inside me. No spark, no shift. He slowed, breath uneven, frustration radiating off his skin. "I need to try something else." His voice was low, certain. He reached up, undid the knots with shaking hands, rubbing my wrists briefly before easing me onto my stomach. I felt him behind me again, hands steady, breathing hard, then hesitation and pressure. My body tensed. "Wait, trust me." I drew a breath, felt him adjust, careful and slow. It was a different kind of strain that tightened everything inside me. He steadied himself, each motion calm, deliberate. I stayed quiet, trying not to pull away, trying to stay with him. His grip was unwavering, his rhythm patient. I focused on the presence of him, the way his effort filled the space between us. He was giving everything, reaching for something he couldn't name. I searched for it too. The change, the spark, nothing. When it was over, he collapsed beside me, chest rising and falling. I stayed still, blindfold loose, wrists tingling. The room was quiet. Then softly, "Still nothing?" I swallowed, turned my face toward the ceiling. Still nothing. We were back in his office. "I don't know what else to do," my husband said. "We tried," I added. "Everything." The therapist watched us, quiet for a beat. Then, "You've done more than most, but sometimes effort isn't the answer. Sometimes it's experience." My husband shifted. "What kind of experience?" He leaned forward slightly. "Guided, controlled, shared with someone who knows how to lead it." Silence. I felt it before I understood it. "You mean you?" I asked. His voice stayed calm. "I know how to move slow, how to create trust. You wouldn't be guessing anymore. You'd be following." My husband blinked. "You want to be part of it?" "Only if it's what you both want," he said. "But from what I've seen, you're not stuck because you don't love each other. You're stuck because you've never truly let go." I swallowed. "And you think you could help me do that?" His eyes didn't move. "I know I can." My husband looked at me. I didn't look away. I'd be there the entire time, the therapist added, reading you, adjusting, giving you permission to feel. No one spoke. Then he stood, walked to the couch. He didn't touch me at first, just held my gaze. May I? I nodded. His fingers touched my jaw, light but sure. Then he leaned in and kissed me. Software. Still. But I didn't pull away. He said nothing, just stepped behind me and began to undress me, slow and exact. There was no hesitation, no performance, only control. He slid my shirt from my shoulders and unfastened my bra without pause. The air touched my skin like a warning. I exhaled, slow, unsteady. His hands moved lower, steady at my waist, loosening each layer without a word. He drew everything down to the floor in one motion. I stood still, not cold, not nervous, just waiting. Behind me, I heard my husband breathe, shallow, focused, still watching, still silent. The therapist placed his palm between my shoulder blades and guided me toward the couch. I followed. He helped me lie back, then lowered himself beside me. His mouth found my neck, soft, calm. He moved lower, lips drifting across my collarbone, then down along my side. No rush, no goal, just presence. His hands rested at my hips, then lower, then still. I felt warmth. Not sharp, not sudden, just there. He didn't speak, didn't check, just responded. My breath caught, not loudly, but enough for him to hear. My hips moved once, then again. He adjusted, not dramatically, just enough. I wasn't floating this time, I wasn't tensing, I was fully inside the moment. Behind us, the floor creaked. A faint shift. My husband had moved, closer now. Still quiet, still watching. The therapist stood. He unbuttoned his shirt, folded it neatly to the side. Then without a word, he reached for my hand, lifted it. Not forceful, not demanding, just guided. I followed the motion, let him lead it. Where, I couldn't say. I didn't ask, but I didn't resist. He leaned down and kissed me. Slow, steady, then helped me lie back again. He moved over me until we were aligned. No sudden shift, no obvious start, just closeness. I felt the pressure of him, warm, grounded, real. He held my hips in place, moved with care, not for reaction, but for rhythm. I responded without realizing it. I reached up, touched his shoulders, not to guide him, but to hold on. His hands slid beneath me, adjusted my hips, just slightly. Something inside shifted. A breath, a hum, a beat between one moment and the next. From the corner of my eye, I saw my husband now standing beside us, watching, still breathing hard. The therapist slowed, turned his head. She's ready. He helped guide my husband forward, lifted his arm, positioned him, then stayed beside me, one hand at my thigh, one at my stomach. I felt the change, the presence, the stillness. My husband leaned over me. I didn't flinch. I welcomed him. The rhythm returned, different now, familiar but deeper. My body adjusted, my breathing matched. The therapist kept his hand where it was, anchoring me, grounding me. Each breath felt fuller, each second closer to something I couldn't name. The air thickened, the space around us pulsed, and then it broke open. No flash, no noise, just release. Like I had finally returned to myself. I arched once, gripped the cushion, exhaled completely. For the first time, there was no doubt, no distance, no pretending, just feeling, and it was real. I finally felt something again, but I'm still not sure if it was healing or something else entirely. Would you ever let someone else step in to fix what you couldn't? Tell me what you think in the comments. I want to know. And before you go, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and click the bell so you don't miss what comes next. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next one.